Napoleon wasn't short, and the fact that you probably believe he was is one of the most successful propaganda campaigns in modern history. Let's talk about how a measurement error, a political enemy, and a cartoonist combined to shrink one of history's most powerful men, and why the myth stuck for over 200 years. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica in 1769. By his 30s, he had conquered most of Europe, rewritten the legal systems of France, and commanded armies that stretched from Spain to Russia. He was, by any measure, a giant of history. But somewhere along the way, history decided he was also a tiny, angry little man. So where did that come from? The answer starts with a unit conversion error. When Napoleon died in 1821, his height was officially recorded as 5 feet 2 inches. That measurement was taken in French units, specifically French inches, called pouces. The problem is that a French inch is slightly longer than an English inch. When you convert correctly, 5 feet 2 in French units equals 5 feet 7 in English units. 5 feet 7. That was the average height for a French man in 1800. Napoleon was not short. He was completely average for his time, his country, and his class. So how did the error survive? Because the English-speaking world, particularly Britain, which was at war with France for most of Napoleon's reign, ran with the wrong number. Once it entered British newspapers and political cartoons, it took on a life of its own. And no one did more to cement the myth than a British cartoonist named James Gillray. Gillray drew Napoleon relentlessly throughout the early 1800s, always tiny, always furious, always dwarfed by the British figures around him. The character was called Little Boney. He was depicted as a child throwing tantrums, a miniature emperor drowning in an oversized hat. These cartoons were wildly popular. They spread across Britain and eventually across the world. And they worked, not just as satire, but as propaganda. If you could make your enemy seem physically ridiculous, you undermined his authority without firing a single shot. There's one more layer to this. Napoleon was surrounded by an elite personal guard called the Imperial Guard. The minimum height requirement to join was 5 feet 7 inches, tall for the era. So whenever you saw Napoleon standing next to his own guards, he genuinely did look shorter by comparison. But he wasn't short. He was standing next to the tallest soldiers in France, deliberately selected for their imposing size. The contrast became the image became the legend. Today, psychologists even named a behavioral pattern after him, the Napoleon complex, the idea that short men overcompensate by being aggressive or domineering. The irony is that the man the complex is named after wasn't even short. Napoleon stood 5 feet 7. Abraham Lincoln stood 6 feet 4. Genghis Khan was probably around 5 feet 6. History is full of powerful men of all sizes, but only one of them had his height turned into a weapon against him. The truth is that Napoleon's enemies understood something important. You don't need to defeat a man on the battlefield if you can make the world laugh at him first. They succeeded, and 200 years later, we're still repeating their joke. That's the myth. That's the history, and now you know. If this kind of thing interests you, the real stories behind the facts you thought you knew, subscribe to Bramlit TV. There's a lot more where this came from.